Don Global presents
the DG Recruit podcast on everything headhunting and recruitment. Achieve the life and career you envision. What's up, game changers? It's your host, Don, founder of Don Global, the headhunting and career coaching company helping you achieve the life and career you envision.
In today's DG Recruit podcast, we will cover 5 tips to succeed at sales. Now, I've been in the sales game since 2011. I started in this business when I was 23 years old. Just for some context, as a headhunter, my job all day long is to sell to clients and candidates, the majority of whom are double to triple my age. Now, think about it. When you're a headhunter and you're recruiting for the pharmaceutical industry like I was, the average age of the worker that you're speaking to is at least 40 years old because they have to go to PhD, they have to get their master's, they have to be in the business for a while, and then I can poach them to move them for my clients. So at age 23, my job was to tell hiring managers, now hiring managers, people who hire for their divisions, are usually also in their 40s, 50s, and 60s, and 70s. These are older folks because especially if you're talking to like the owner of a venture capital firm, they're going to be a little bit older, so as a young person starting off in sales, I think you have to very quickly figure out how you're going to do this thing. Otherwise, you're not even going to get anywhere because frankly, like sales is a tough cutthroat business. We all know that. That's why there are very few people who make the majority of the money in this line of work. So the first step is to adjust your mindset. I think this is the most challenging. If you're tuning into a how do I get better in sales kind of podcast, it means that either you have a lot of time on your hands and you just like to enrich yourself, but most people come here because they're not experiencing success in sales. So why are you not achieving success in sales? It starts off with the first point, which is mindset, right? Mindset is, are you dedicated? Are you truly really attuned to this? Or are you just looking for a quick fix, right? Because the truth is, if you don't see yourself as a long-term salesperson, if you don't really fully absorb that mentality and that identity of being like a legit salesperson and someone who's going to be very, very successful, you're not going to overcome the short-term pain that it takes to get there. And this is the same for every sort of success endeavor, whether it's losing weight, whether it's building wealth, whether it's getting ahead in your career, aka kind of what we're talking about today, getting better at sales. It's just like if you don't have a very strong commitment for the vision of what you want in the future, so much so that you're willing to sacrifice your short-term pleasure, how are you going to actually get there? Right? You haven't made the deal with the devil. In fact, you're just not even doing anything, right? You're just avoiding it. You're just like, I'll just get there when I get there. I'll just do what I can do. That is not a mentality that's going to breed success in sales, because success in sales is like you have to invest so much upfront for a period of time and continue to build your experience. And this is, again, not going to come overnight. So a lot of people just lose steam. Right? They lose steam because they're not actually committed to a long-term success future. They want overnight riches, in which case, well, go to the casino. Go to the casino and put $100 on red, right? So again, I think it's very important for people to understand that if you really want to succeed in any type of sales field, you have to envision the actual behavior that successful salespeople do and then emulate them, do those things. That's the only thing you have to do to break the inertia. Otherwise, it's like, why bother, right? Why bother? So you have to be willing to put in the short-term pain, suffer the short-term pain in order for the long-term success, to break inertia. And that leads me to my second point, which is actions. Right? Actions. So the actions, how can you become successful in a sales career, is that you're going to dedicate and prioritize your time at work. So a lot of people are distracted. And I can only say that I was very, very lucky that in 2011, we did not have Snapchat. I've never even used Snapchat. We don't have TikTok. We didn't have Twitter the way we have it today. We didn't have Facebook the way we had it today. We still use social media largely as a way to communicate with our family and friends. It's not the crazy media machine it is today. The amount of content, the reels, the YouTube shorts, they're so distracting. And that is really dangerous for anyone who is trying to build their career, because you're not in a place where you can coast. You're just not there yet. So you have to physically find a way to focus your time and your energy on dedicating it to your sales activities for a certain time period, investment of time as well as volume. Right? You can't just call one client. You have to call a lot of them, right? So before, as a recruiter doing both sales and recruiting, my job was very, very stringent about how we're supposed to do recruiting. First of all, I work in the office 5 days a week. So when you're in the office 5 days a week, you're making phone calls because you're in an open desk environment. And your boss is sitting right next to you, and they're hearing you either sit there and not make calls, or they're seeing what you're doing, right? So you're forced by social obligation and by the kind of obligation of the competition around you to be hitting up those phones. And what's scary to me nowadays is so many young people are in positions where they don't have that pressure anymore. And it's not helpful to you if you want to rise to the top, because actually rising to the top, you need to be competing with people who are very, very hungry. If you're competing against lackluster people, you can only end up lackluster because you are your environment, right? So I was very lucky that you were forced to dedicate time to prioritize your job, because when you're in that environment, if you don't do it, you kind of stick out like a sore thumb. So I don't know, how you're going to do this, but you got to find a way to do this, because this is important. You have to put yourself in a position where you're dedicating yourself to work. Sales requires a lot of dedication to succeed. It takes a lot of time and effort to learn the techniques, to do the experimentation, to learn what works, to have the conversations, right? To get people on the phone, to generate the right content via email or via LinkedIn or social media, whatever, and cold calling. This all takes time. You have to sit there and cold call, right? So back in the day when I was working in the office 5 days a week, I was billing a lot of money and doing a lot because I was forced to do that. Now I own my own business. Now I'm at a different stage of life. I just don't have to hustle the way I used to, right? But before starting out to get successful in sales, I had to learn all of that. I had to go through the 12 to 14 to 16 hour work days. I had to go through the 7-day work weeks. You have to go through that experience, right? I just don't think that sales success is going to come at 32 hours a week. There's a very legitimate test case that all successful salespeople at some point in their career, usually at the beginning of their career, had to work a lot because you're trying to get ahead. You can't get ahead without your 10,000 hours. You just don't have the experience. So you need to get the experience as soon as possible. So actually, logically, the longer you work, the harder you work, the more you'll actually get success in your sales career because you're doing it up front and early. Okay? A lot of people are not putting in the work at the outset. And what happens is that they drag it on. They drag out the learning curve. So it only hurts themselves. It does not help, right? So I'd rather work hard and fast, short-term pain for long-term gain, than the opposite. Drag it out. Take your time. Don't prioritize it. Just no urgency, right? So that's number 2 is you got to take action. It's got to be very prioritized. Focus. Now, let's talk about actions some more. Number 3, the actions have to be done right. Okay, so in sales and in recruiting specifically, there's a certain way to generate clients. And I teach about it in my trainings, and it's called the most placeable candidate method, right? This is an internal dialogue, internal term that only applies to recruiters, right? This is a specific sales strategy of leveraging top candidates to open up doors in niche markets. Now, if you don't have that training, you have to go and get the training. So you either pay for it, or you either work at a recruiting firm and they teach you how to do it, or you take a course. You need to learn the training. So there's an element of learning what actions need to be done. And there's also an element of experimenting and putting in the actions into your day-to-day. Because I'll tell you this, working at a recruiting firm, not everybody was successful. In fact, most people are not successful at a recruiting firm. They're not trying and they're not implementing the things that their boss is teaching them to do. So for instance, our boss would say, hey, find a top candidate, sell them to a client. And that's the direction you're given. And a lot of people would just be scared and wouldn't want to do that. So they don't want to cold call. They don't want to hit up clients. They're scared of those conversations. Well, unfortunately, if you're scared, you are not going to win, right? If you're scared of these things and if you're not willing to put in the effort to do so, then where the hell are you going to get the clients? So a lot of people, it's not so much of a knowledge gap as it is a complete mental and problem that they have, like a mindset issue, right? So this goes back to topic number one. That's why I said at the beginning of this podcast episode and this tips list is mindset. Because a lot of people, again, like I said, they're scared of success. They don't actually know, they don't feel confident that they deserve being a top leader in the field. And they're scared of that kind of pressure. They almost like are scared of their own future, you know? And so that's why they're not actually doing what their boss is telling them to do. They're not actually listening to the training and the coaching. Because again, a lot of these people have been trained. A lot of people have been taught how to do this. And by the way, these concepts are not rocket science. And that's what you'll hear a lot in recruiting is none of this is rocket science. It really isn't. This is not hard, right? So number one, actions to be done correctly, you got to ask the right questions. When you're talking to clients, you need to know what are the right questions to ask. How do you know? You prepare. You write down every single possible iteration of a question that you will ask your clients. Now, how many recruiters do you know at work who has done that? Who has actually taken a weekend to sit down and write out hundreds of questions in their head, in their mind, and on paper? How many people do you actually know who has taken that extra time to sit there and come up with all of those questions? Because I'll tell you, the majority of salespeople don't do that. So then what happens is they have a client call and they don't know what's the right question to ask because they haven't thought about it. They haven't thought about it, so they haven't practiced it. And because you don't practice it, you can't ask the questions properly when you are put on the spot and you're nervous and you don't know what to say because you were not prepared. Okay. So something I did a lot in my sales career was actually write out hundreds of questions. Every question, and I did it for candidates and I did it for clients. I crafted hundreds of questions. Not only did I craft them, I practiced them out loud. So I started asking the questions in a very authoritative way. I did not start coming out of the womb speaking like this. This type of speech pattern and how I learned to communicate was through practice, right? So a lot of people are like, well, you seem born for sales. Certainly I was not. I had to learn it and I had to spend time reading lots of books, practicing speech patterns, speaking out loud, then going on to phone calls, spending lots of time on the phone to get this experience, right? Because you only learn when you practice and try it out in the real world. This is why people are like, oh, I need all this training. I'm like, honestly, you probably don't need all this training. You need more execution. You actually need more practice. That's what you need more on, right? Most people, it's like you actually got to practice this stuff more. So not only do you have to ask the right question, you have to ask the extra question. So what is the extra question? When you're having conversations as a salesperson to people, whether it's a candidate, whether it's a client, because again, I'm teaching sales skills here, and sales skills you'll use on candidates and on clients, right? This is not a how to land clients. That's a different conversation. I'm talking specifically about sales skills. So sales skills, you have to ask the extra question. As in, hey, why are you not happy at your current role? Oh, I don't like my boss. Are you just going to end it at that? Of course not. I'm going to keep asking, well, what don't you like about your boss? What's the relationship like? I need to dig very deeply into the pain areas so I can really understand the mindset of the customer. Same for the client. Why do you need to hire? Oh, it's a backfill. Okay, cool. It's a backfill. That's the end? No, I want to know more. Why? What happened? How long ago did the person leave? Why did they leave? Why do you think they left? How did you feel about that person? Did you want them to leave or did you want them to stay? Was it voluntary that you lost this person or was it not? I want the full details, right? I don't just want a simple answer and move on to the next question. That is not proper sales technique. Sales technique is diving very, very deeply into the questions and to totally understand what your customer is going through and feeling. Okay. And then you have to ask the questions right. The tone in which you speak, the way that you communicate with people, the way that you sound, how authoritative, how knowledgeable you sound. This all really matters because people buy off of how you're presenting yourself. So if you're presenting yourself as a young 23-year-old, I'm just so lost. I don't know how to do recruiting. Never done it before. Just wanted to ask. Can I ask? Then you're going to get a very different set of results than somebody who's going to say, I know I don't have 20 years of experience. I'm 23 years old coming into the recruiting industry. I don't really know what I'm doing, but yet somehow I have to fake it. I have to fake it till I make it, right? So that's why you hear me using this tone, and this tone is called downspeak. Downspeak is where I'm not going to be like, oh my God, can I talk to you? Do you have a minute? Can I speak? No, you're not asking for permission. I'm not sorry for calling you. I'm calling you for a very legitimate reason, and here's the case of why I'm calling you, right? It's the attitude of which you communicate with people that makes a whole load of difference. Right now, there is this raging battle online on what people are talking about when it comes to cold calling. And people are like, cold calling doesn't work. Cold calling sucks. Don't do it. Don't even bother. It's because you suck at it. Because cold calling is the easiest way to win business. Easiest way. If I had a market where I could cold call with great success, I would do it. I'm in a market where 80% of my candidates are no longer going to be viable in 1 to 2 years. So that's the only reason why I don't waste my time cold calling. In my previous markets, cold calling was a blessing and it was the easiest way to get clients and fill jobs. Obviously, in my last 2 markets, I did technical search, which again, cold calling is number one solution to your candidate and client problems. But when you do executive search, you can't really cold call much because you're talking to CEOs now. You're talking to, high net worth individuals, and they're not really in a place, especially if you're dialing through the main line, and they're not putting their cell phones out there. So it's hard to get at those people, and you have to find multiple ways to get in through them. Not like what I did before. Before it was easy. I call through the main line, I get put through, boom, I can talk to the hiring manager in 2 seconds. Right? So cold calling has its very, very serious and effective uses. And you got to understand your market and what works in your market. Like I said, if you're calling admin assistants, that's not going to help you. It doesn't matter if you become their best friend. They're not going to bother their boss and risk their job to help you as the vendor. It's not how it works. Obviously, medical sales, there's a whole nother way to do it, but I'm not in medical sales, right? In recruitment, admin assistants are not going to help push a headhunter through to their hot shot, venture capital partner. No, you're going to have to make yourself known to them. And there's multiple ways to do that. Obviously, I share that on my sales trainings on how to get clients, which is a different conversation. But my point here is that when you talk to these senior people, they expect a certain gravitas in the way that you communicate. And it doesn't matter how old you are, you have to convey that gravitas or else they will lose respect for you. And that means, yes, using big SAT words. It means using the right language. It means speaking in an elevated way. It means having a sound in your vocal tone that makes people feel interested to talk to you. It really is having a captivating voice. And having a captivating voice makes a humongous difference when you're doing sales. Because when people hear you on the phone and they hear the right tone, it doesn't matter if you're male, female, young or old, it does not matter. It's the tone. It's how you sound. And if they like the way that you sound, they'll listen. And that's the key to cold calling. That's the key to phone conversations with strangers, is the way you sound is captivating and they will listen. Now, a lot of people, before you start being like, well, Don, you're a female, you must be calling all these dudes. I'll let you know, my first market predominantly was women. And the reason is because my first technical market that I recruited for is regulatory writing. Most of the people in regulatory writing, actually, if you look at the gender split, it's majority female populated business track. Right. So again, your voice has to be likable by all people, by as many people as possible. It has to be neutrally enjoyable, no matter who you speak to, because you need to win every single Pokemon over. Right? You're trying to win them all. All right. So the third point, like I said, is you have to do it right. Not only do you have to do it and spend the time to do it and be dedicated to doing it, which was point number 2. Number 3 is you got to do it right. You got to have the right training. You got to know what to do. And then you have to execute properly on the spot instead of being unprepared, instead of being nervous, instead of stuttering like I just did, right? And a lot of people are like, Don, it's not nice when you talk about stuttering, but I'm just being honest with you. If you have a speech impediment, it's going to be very hard to do sales as a career. Because it's hard enough for people who don't have speech impediments to do sales. And it's going to be even harder for you if you actually have a speech impediment. People don't like it when I talk about the truth, but that is the truth. Because if you are a customer and someone is calling you and they can't even pull out a full sentence, you are not going to have patience to listen to that individual. 9 times out of 10, you might be that one angel out of hundreds of people that will have the patience to indulge the person. But when we're talking about high volume, high value sales, sophisticated sales careers, you need to speak in a certain way. Your speech pattern has to be captivating, like I said, and be appropriate to the audience that you're trying to win over. So if you're trying to win the trust of C-level clients who, by the way, have their pick, they can work with any agency. Why yours? You can't be deficient in any way. And I'm sorry to say that. This is just how the business works. Every single top biller I know speaks pretty much flawlessly. They sound almost like broadcasters. These are your basic qualifications for our job, along with many other communications heavy jobs like broadcasting. If you want to be a radio presenter, you have to sound a certain way. If you want to be an actor or actress, you have to sound a certain way because that is part of the job. So sales is very much part of that. We have a similar type of job. It's communications for the most part. That's why actors and performers, I was acting, I was singing. I can do sales because I know how to speak to people. I've been doing waitressing jobs, hospitality jobs, very fast-paced, very intense, stressful communication heavy jobs, right? So those are all the practices that make you succeed and help you get better at sales. All right, the last 2 tips I have for you. Number 4 is follow through and execution. Back to step 1, right? Back to step 1, you are trying to behave the way top producers behave. Top producers are very detail oriented. Now, I posted about this the other day. Not every top producer acts the same way. There are some people that wake up at 5 a.m. and go out for a run. And then after that, they have a diligent office setting. They're OCD, like literally OCD, have like clean, family habits, clean personal habits, have pristine desks. Then you have people like me. I just don't care. I don't spend a lot of time on my appearance. I don't really care how I look. I wing it. And that's where I shine, right? So there's 2 different types of people, but they are operating in the same way when it comes to business. When it comes to business, they are attention detail to the max. Like I am so paranoid, you wouldn't even begin to understand. Like the way that I analyze every single thing people say, what they do, how I double check my emails, how I double check my messages, how I double check my posts. It's all done with a high attention to detail, right? And that is the same thing, is that follow through, the execution. You are really tight on your processes. You are really tight on closing out loops in a timely manner. You're really tight on asking the tough questions when they need to be asked. Now, that's the part about sales training that I think a lot of people don't have adequate resources for. It's like you have to have the guts to close out those loops. Ask the toughest questions that you don't even want to ask because you don't want to know the answer. You don't want to know the answer, and it's kind of awkward, and it might be even mean to ask, right, to a client or a candidate. It might be just a tough conversation point or a difficult topic, and you just don't even want to talk about it. You want to avoid it to the best of your ability. You don't want the drama that comes with it, and that's what makes people fail at sales. You have to be confrontational. This is a confrontational, take body hits type of job. You have to be in your face. The more in your face, the less surprises down the line. And this is something that we all have to get used to, especially when you start off in the world as a young 23-year-old girl like I was that one day. And very quickly you realize you don't have time to mess around. You don't have to pussyfoot around. You don't have any luxury to be kind for funsies. No, you got to get right to business, because the weakness that you have, you being weak, is actually going to lead to more problems down the line because you're not efficient. You're not efficient at your job, right? And this is something very hard to accept about sales. It's like nice people do not get ahead in this business because being nice means you're weak. And when you're weak, people take advantage of you. And this happens whether it's candidates or clients. They can sense that you're weak. And you might think that you're being kind, but they see right through it. They know that you're scared. And when you're scared, they take advantage of you. They mess around with your fee. They don't want to give you the type of rate that you want to give your candidate because they don't take you seriously. And this is the problem with business. In business, you have to be a tough negotiator. This is a big part of our job. In any sales job, you have to be tough at negotiating. And there's a way to be firm and nice at the same time, right? So a lot of people are like, well, I don't want to be a cutthroat asshole. I'm not asking you to do that. You just need to learn how to communicate strongly. And that doesn't mean to be mean or be rude. It means you have to be able to put your foot down in an effective manner. And that means playing out the scenarios in your head, sometimes playing around with what you're going to say and how you're going to defend yourself or how you're going to structure your argument when you talk to clients and candidates, because you're going to have to get physical. There's going to be a lot of confrontation in those conversations at every step of the way. Right? So you do have to follow through and execute. You can't put your emotional well-being over the practical situation at the time, because what you feel would feel better for you sometimes is actually not going to help you with their customer, right? Because how you can't be selfish. You can't just say, well, I'd like to do this because it would make me feel good. No, you got to do what's right for the business deal at hand. So I think that's another big thing that a lot of people have to grasp and master as they grow their career and their sales job. The last piece of advice is stability. A lot of salespeople, I alluded to this earlier, a lot of salespeople don't have patience. They want success overnight. They want six-figure outcomes. They want $300,000 immediately. They don't have the patience. And I have worked alongside people like this. I have recruited and spoken to people like this. I have managed and trained people like this, and they don't get far. They don't get far. This is pretty detrimental because they don't have the patience to build up their experience. They want success within 1 quarter. They want success within 1 year. They're not willing to see the bigger picture of what success should look like in 3 to 5 years. They want everything today. And so somebody like that is just like a glutton. It's like someone who just wants everything today. I want to eat the pizza, I want to eat the ice cream, and I want to eat the hamburger now. And those people who can't delay their gratification, who can't see the long-term result, those are the people that do not do well in sales over time, because what happens is that they keep on having to try something new without ever seeing the results of what they could have achieved had they just stuck to the plan. And it's the saddest thing to witness. It is the hardest thing to see people do, because these are people that want success. These are people that work decently hard. These are people that just tried, but they just didn't try long enough. So this is the same analogy as the person digging for gold. They're digging and they're digging and they're digging, but they stop just 1 foot short of hitting gold because they don't have the vision. They did not see the gold. They're just trying anything and everything, and they're just losing patience with whatever they're given. So again, this is why I say stability is so important in a sales career. And a lot of people will argue with me. They'll say tenure doesn't matter. There's a number of reasons why people jump around. Well, the most successful people don't jump around. They don't. They stay at one sales organization for at least 3 to 5 years, and they build their career year on year. Year 2, year 3 is where you see the exponential return. You're not going to see it in the first 6 months. And people get, like I said, impatient. They lose hope. They lose motivation. They use that as an excuse to give up because they're not seeing the overnight success. So unfortunately, this is why in my 5 tips today, I want to leave you with this note. Because a lot of people are going to go through some good times and bad times. This just happens. That's natural. In any career field, in any business endeavor, in any macro or micro market, there are good days and bad days. That's just going to happen to anybody. And if you don't have the patience to wait out the good days and the bad days, if you don't have that patience, what you're going to keep doing is what my dad says, is you're going to go to the cornfield, you're going to break a piece of corn, and you're going to see, is this corn juicy? Pff, screw this corn. I'm going to look at this corn. Is this corn juicy? Screw this corn. I'm going to look at the next one, right? So all you're going to do is just keep looking for the next best thing. And meanwhile, you're just wasting your own time, never really building up the economies of scale, never building up your success tenure or track record, right? So again, this is very key, is you got to have stability. So a lot of you know I'm writing a book. And in my book, it is called Agency Recruitment 101. It's the ultimate insider's guide to this business and career. And one of the key traits I talk about for top billers is they have to be mentally stable. And that's very true. You have to be stable in this job. Just like I said earlier, you have to speak properly. Because if you don't speak with the right cadence and the tone, and you don't have, talking speech impediments, if you have these problems, it just makes it that much harder to find success in this line of work. Just like how I would say to a singer, don't go into singing if you can't sing well, because the competition is very fierce. Like if you cannot sing up to a certain range, you shouldn't even really try, because it's very competitive out there, right? You have to understand your strategy. Right. So maybe it's like, I'm going to play house music because I'm not going to be like a Whitney Houston, right? You have to have that self-awareness. And just like in our industry, that comes with, understanding that you can manage yourself, because this is a very stressful job. Sales is very stressful. You're going to be talking to clients that you do not like, and they do not treat you well. That's going to happen. It's guaranteed to happen. You're going to have nasty conversations with people. People are going to call you all sorts of names potentially. Although, knock on wood, it's never really happened to me, but it could happen. People could get mad at you. You could make a cold call and do it very poorly, and someone could get very mad at you and say, F off, never call me again, I hate you. That could happen. It usually means that you probably didn't do the best, and you could probably do better, because again, I've just never experienced that, but I've heard, other people make calls and that happens. But again, the point here is you need to have the stability, because you cannot predict how a person is going to behave. You cannot predict what your customers are going to do. Right? You have to be willing to take that gamble every single minute of the day that you're on the phones, that you're putting yourself out there. And this is the nature of the job, right? So having that mental stability, that ability to hold down a job is actually really important in recruiting, because you see some people jumping around one firm, then another firm, then another firm, or like, oh, I tried this and I tried that and I tried this, and they never end up really, truly creating a life of abundance, of stability, of secure returns. In the time that I've done my recruitment firm, DG Recruit, since 2018, I've stuck with it. And I know a lot of people along the way that didn't stick with it. And they're not in a great position right now. They're just constantly going from one thing to the next, right? My business partner, she's stuck with it. So like when you stick with something and you have the mental capacity to actually dedicate your life and your work and your brain cells and your vision into something, the results are naturally going to be a lot more positive. So that's what I want to leave you with as it relates to sales tips, because a lot of people I know have those tough days and they want to give up and they just think moving firms is the answer or doing something else is the answer. But then you realize that wasn't the problem. It was kind of you all along. As my mom always says, your greatest enemy is actually yourself. It isn't anybody else. So it's about self-management, understanding yourself, self-care, and ultimately, like I said earlier, self-awareness. So I hope you like these 5 sales tips around how to increase your success in a sales job. And of course, if in the future you want to take my sales course on how to land clients, that is something I'm releasing on August 11th. So make sure to join that event. You can sign up on my website, dondonzhu.com. That course is being released on how to land clients as a recruiter, and you're trying to drive sales and you want to land clients. So I'm going to teach you the MPC method that I've used a million times, and that's going to help you get up and running. So that is the first thing. And then the second thing is, as always, if you enjoy our podcast, make sure to leave a review. And I've asked for reviews and I'm monitoring those reviews. So go ahead and leave me a review. If you've done the review, hit me up. I will give you a free copy of my book. I'm more than happy to add you to that and give you a free copy of my book for leaving a review on our podcast. And I appreciate you all listening so diligently and loyally all these years, and I see the numbers just climbing up. So thank you so much for all of your support on my podcast. And of course, if you have any other questions, feel free to pop them to me. Always glad to create more content in real time for you. And just keep on keeping on. That's what sales is at the end of the day. It's, like I said, dedication, stability, continued investment, prioritization until you get to where you want to go.